This is the industrial side. Most industrial businesses are either won or lost in the day-to-day operations. These are conversations with the operators who run these firms, talking about how they run them, what works, and what doesn't. All right, Thomas Campbell, how you doing?
Too bad. How about yourself, Brian? Good to be here.
I'm living the dream as always. It's been a long
Mm,
time no see, but good to see your smiling face again.
likewise.
So for those who don't know you, I'll kind of give you a little bit of background. This is Thomas Campbell, the CEO of Magic Marine, kind of a national distributor of marine supply products and different industrial supplies. Tell us a little bit more about kind of what you do and for who, because industrial distribution is sort of a very broad word, even marine distribution. Do you sell
Right.
boats? You sell.
None of the above. Yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, we would be most easily described as, Home Depot or Lowe's for the cruise and merchant and other maritime industries out sailing out of Florida. Although we do, as you mentioned, serve the entire ports all across the United States, and a lot of you know the services and products we provide are not exclusive just to our catalog. What the reason these operators come to us is both for the catalog products, which includes a lot of exclusive metric sizing, 220-volt European brands that they have trouble finding elsewhere, but also anytime they need some level of expertise in sourcing something unusual, they'll come to us as well to track it down. And last but not least, we do a lot in terms of the fulfillment side of it. So we make sure that we ship complete so that everything's on pallet, waiting for the ship when it shows up on the port. And then likewise, we've got an FTZ designation that we're hoping to get rolled out later this year, which will help us not just from sourcing those overseas items tariff free, but if any of our customers want any assistance in bringing in ship spares or pump spares, sorry, engine spares or pump spares and having, not be tariff, we can help out with that.
No, that makes sense. So essentially, you're almost doing global sourcing for the cruise lines. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Global sourcing, making sure that all the parts and pieces that their deck and engineering and maintenance need to keep the ship afloat are readily available here in the United States.
Got it. So when there was sort of the tariff impacts happening, were you eating some of those costs? Was it something that you were able to talk to your different customers about as things got more expensive, or how did you navigate that part?
So it was definitely a little bit of a tricky conversation. Some of our customers, these are all global companies, and it didn't really matter how we reacted as Metric Marine. They, in some cases, knee-jerk reactions of just kind of throwing up their hands and saying, "Yeah, we just don't want to deal with this chaos. We don't want
Yeah.
to deal with disruption. So we're just gonna default to sourcing elsewhere until the dust settles in the United States on all this stuff, and we can kind of get a better read of the room." And so that was a challenge and definitely impacted our numbers in 2025. The other side of the coin, a lot of our domestic vendors did end up raising prices either because their inputs, their raw materials went up in costs, or they saw their competitor pricing go up. Ironically for us, one of the things that initiated on our part was a little bit of a vendor audit. And my purchasing manager and I had already planned at some point to take a trip over to Asia and look for opportunities there, but the tariffs definitely accelerated those plans. And for many of our product categories, we were able to find ISOs that are generic. We were able to find alternatives and develop direct relationships with manufacturers elsewhere that would, even with the tariffs, allow us to keep our costs in check. And once we get the FTZ established, would allow us to scale even further. One of the key aspects of our industry that you know, you know, is that all of our customers are largely, well, majority of them are foreign flag vessels. So unless they're, what's called Jones Act U.S. flag vessel, the vast majority are exempt from tariffs. All this noise, they just don't want to deal with it, nor should they have it. So, at FTZ, when we get that designation later this year, that'll allow us to essentially bring product in from overseas um, and have it, come to our warehouse, but from a paperwork and trade perspective, it doesn't ever enter the United States. Customs and Border Protection treated as okay, the it's if it's so long as it stays within the metric marine warehouse, it is technically outside the United States and tariff exempt. And so, yeah, that'll give us a significant competitive advantage in serving our market.
Certainly. I mean, I guess how does the purchase process work? 'Cause it makes it sound like there's probably, like, if I were to imagine, like, Virgin Cruise Line, there's overseas boats and vessels, there's maybe some that were ported here in the US. Who is actually making purchases, and what does that process look like?
So there's a lot of different stakeholders and it varies by company, but a typical process would look like, a maintenance engineer on a vessel has a project or, the shopkeeper on the vessel is taking an inventory of their stock they keep and on board, and they decide that they need either to restock or to source additional parts for a project. And they'll create an RFQ or request for quote within their ERP system. From there, it goes through a procurement department buyer who's typically shoreside, somebody that could be in India or you know, Philippines or overseas, could be in Miami. We don't know. It depends again on the company. They submit that RFQ though to a number of different vendors. Maybe one, we may the only ones that get that RFQ because we're the only one in their system that buy that product. But more often than not, we're one of like two or three different companies that flagged in the system as a potential source. So we'll get that RFQ. We quote it ideally within 24 hours with a price point, and at that point, the buyer decides which vendor they want to go with. They award that RFQ, and then it gets approved by the ship manager on board the vessel, uh, who kind of has budgetary oversight. And so once they have the pricing back, they can say, yeah, go ahead with that order, or no, let's pull off on that project. We couldn't support it because that's a little bit more expensive than we had envisioned. Um, you know, obviously there are wrinkles that sometimes the engineers don't provide any detail and, or there's something that they ask that's out of stock or discontinued. And that's to some degree one of the other reasons that use cruise lines use us is that technical knowledge that we may have where we can read between the lines and understand what it is that the engineer is looking to accomplish, provide alternatives. So if they don't give us enough specs, we can, or something's discontinued, we can propose an alternative, um, and, have a intelligent conversation with the engineer where the buyer maybe clueless and don't really know what they're sourcing.
Got it. So your team is able to have, like, sort of, back and forth with the engineer because they're maybe the user, but not the purchaser in kinda your sales process.
Again, it varies by company, maybe
Yeah.
directly with the engineer, or it may have to, the conversation may have to follow through the buyer, where we just give the feedback to the buyer and the buyer takes it to the vessel. And sometimes we get an answer quickly, sometimes it sits there for weeks and just depends.
And in terms of the award process, I mean, what are some of the reasons why you can win versus someone else in a bid? Is it, whoever's delivering the best price the fastest probably gets a good look, or, like, kinda what are the key criteria you think people use?
The key criteria on paper are obviously price, but also speed to quote. These buyers, they're just looking to get through the day and clear the day. So if you're the first one, early bird gets the one sometimes. And then, another aspect that I think we're leaning into more is just the relationship side of it and making sure that we're following up, that we're communicating with those buyers and, not leaving them hanging. If they ask a question, I'll get back to them quickly. If they send us a quote, I will get back to them quickly. If we send a quote or we don't hear back, I would follow up and ask, hey, what's going on here? What can we do to make your life easier? And being more proactive rather than reactive. The relationship building is part of it, the trust, and make them knowing that you don't cause problems, that when they award it to you, the order is going to show up on board the vessel and they don't have to chase you down on back ordered items or whatnot. And working as a solution provider, try to make their jobs easier. So Yeah, it can also be local or not. And that's one other aspect where sometimes they will give preference to a vendor that is able to to the to a vessel going to a port without any freight involved, or just they may have a preference for the shopping local to
Yeah,
political reasons.
that makes sense. So, in terms of how this process comes in, do you have like a direct connection between your customers and your ERP system, or how does it flow and who responds to the quotes?
Yeah, so when I acquired the company 2.5 years ago, the way it worked was kind of one of two ways, either a PDF email RFQ that showed up in the inbox or through a portal, vendor portal where um, the Royal Caribbean, for example, has their own in-house portal. The rest of the cruise industry and many others use like third-party portal like ShipServe or FareShip. You know, Measured Rain would download the PDF, mark it up, and then send back the detail. And they enter the data back into the portal or send the PDF marked up back to the customer. Since then, what we've done is develop direct integrations with those portals and utilize, a certain amount of logic and or AI, however you want to term it, to extract the data from those emailed PDFs directly into our ERP. That has allowed us a couple things. One is to cross-reference all the lines, of those RFQs, so that they come if there's anything that they're asking for that's in our catalog already or that they've bought from us before, and we've got that part number in there, then it automatically makes the match and provides the price. And that obviously, eliminates a lot of potential for getting error, eliminates a lot of wasted time chasing things down, and helps us provide more uh, faster and accurate service for the customer.
That brings up a good point because I wonder how much value there is in the human eyes on the specific ask from the customer and the quote versus something like an AI tool that could cross reference everything on its own. Is that something that you've been kind of looking at doing yourself or seeing other competitors do?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, AI is coming along quickly, and it's a huge buzzword for every industry. In our case, I think there's a little bit of a balance. We see that it's getting better, and that matching function can iteratively improve for things that perhaps it can help with. But the challenge that we have is, a lot of what we sell is very specific, very tech. And so that tendency for AI hallucinations is something that we can't tolerate. If we are selling a screw, for example, it has to have a very specific uh, material, thread count, diameter, head type, right? And if any one of those specs is off by even a little bit, it's a totally different product, and the customer is not going to be happy to receive it on board the vessel. It's going to create a discrepancy, not to mention maybe willingness pricing it. So um, relying on AI to make that match just based on description is not something that we're not there yet. Once they solve for hallucinations, but even still, there's always going to be those plenty of scenarios where we get these requests without a matched reference that um, the AI may make a suggestion, right? But ultimately, somebody has to eyeball it and confirm that, yeah, that's correct. The other aspect really was that, while there are certain other things, price checking against competitors, for example, AI can do that. But again, only if we have good competitor product details and references. I don't want to, in that same exact screw, we should not be price checking ourselves against a competitor who AI thinks has a similar product, but the reality is there's one difference in spec that makes all, huge difference in price. So, for those reasons, we have to be very careful in how we implement AI, and that doesn't minimize the potential. There's a lot that can and should be done, be it on automating some of those customer follow-ups and eliminating clicks in process and anything that is very logic driven, you know, automation and AI can help with. The reality is though that for us, we view it as kind of a tool in our kit to minimize or limit the amount of time our team and our people waste on entering and processing data and doing those same iterative clicks that they always have to do. And in order to not eliminate those people, but to free their time up to focus on more value added things like the relationship building and, communicating with customers and getting on board the vessels or in those offices and meet with the customers, hear their problems, and take it back to the organization to make us better.
Right, because there's sort of a tension between, you obviously want as many quotes as possible, but if one of the factors is a fast quote makes you more attractive, people have to be able to get through the quotes. So it's kind of like a chicken or the egg. You can't necessarily overhire your inside sales team because you can't exactly predict, or so I understand, you can't exactly predict the quote volumes. If
Mhm.
these tools were able to just help the research process and kind of allow the person to just validate and, or needed interface back with the customer, that's probably a better use of their time in your mind, right?
Definitely. And once it gets past the quoting stage where we have the product already matched, then there's the order processing and development so that where, we need to interface with our vendors and, keep track of the orders, both on the sales and purchasing side, expedite, send out emails to follow up on things. And a lot of that definitely can be automated as well to help speed things up.
Yeah. 'Cause I don't know if you would agree with this assessment, but in my mind, a distributor's job is to do really annoying parts of the supply chain so that somebody else doesn't have to do it. So there's probably even within that, like how can automation go throughout all those different jobs to be done to make you even faster? Because I imagine that's how you would grow. I mean, in your mind, how do you think that you'll kind of continue to grow the company over the next few years?
Are you talking about top line or
Yeah, it's
talking?
just talking about, top line and then down to bottom line. I don't know if you have different ideas about how you could increase margins versus increase revenue.
Yeah, yeah. So on the top line, there's a few key aspects. One is just squeezing the lemons that we have. Right? We have already tremendous amount of RFQ volume from our customers with, with varying degrees of success and winning those orders. Even though we're doing the same amount of work largely, selling in many cases the same products, it varies greatly how we fall. And so one of the key ways that we intend to grow and have been growing and executing very successfully is just getting better at inside sales, faster quoting, better pricing, or more, I shouldn't say better, but like more tailored pricing where we see that we're not winning on a particular product category with a particular customer, sharpening our pencil there. Finding ways to improve our margins on the back end if we need to through, again, like the FTZ to mitigate tariffs or finding new vendors, whatever the case may be, to make ourselves more competitive. But also really customer education. One of the biggest challenges is not like getting a new customer, it's taking the customers that we already have, again, the ones that, beating them over the head in as many ways as possible. Email, phone call, lunch and learns, and comments on the RFQs or otherwise to educate them on, hey, like we don't just do hand tools. We also do raw materials. We can supply you plywood. We can sell you racks. We can sell you hose. We can, do provide these other brands because oftentimes, when we really look across our customer base, they're only asking, we may be doing really well, but they're only asking for a fraction of our total catalog. And, if we've got the relationship already, just educating them and getting them to buy those other products that we know they're buying grows that wallet share, opens the door to other conversations, allows us to get better pricing because now we're purchasing the same product across a much larger, customer base. So, helps us stock better, et cetera. And that's the key main strategy on that front. Beyond that, on outside sales, it goes again to making the classic enterprise outside sales and getting your foot in the door, but getting that first RFQ or order, great. And we've been doing that across a lot of these other, what few cruise lines we don't really serve, but also a lot of the other merchant fleet operators that we know operate in Florida and elsewhere. The you know, challenge there being again, keeping up with it. And so one of the things that we're working on this year is well, two things we're working on. One is really closing the group on, like, we've gotten pretty good at making that first contact and introducing ourselves to these new customers, but, you know, really growing the relationship once we got that toe in the door, making sure that we're following up on those RFQs. Oftentimes those initial RFQs are asking for things that aren't really in our wheelhouse or aren't really our strongest, most competitive product segments. And so following up, trying to re-educate them on, hey, like we quoted this, let us know what we can do better on that. But also don't forget that, you know, these are the things that we can really help you out on.
No, that's
So
interesting. So when you say education, that also applies to particularly like when you have a new customer that's maybe never purchased before and they've sent you a quote because you met at a trade show or something like that. And it's just kind of like way off from what you would ever really provide anybody. So
absolutely.
that could then lead to a conversation of being, thanks for the order. It probably doesn't make sense for us to do this for you. If you would like us to go find this, it might take extra time. But here, let's take 10 minutes and talk about these are the, like really the core areas of what we provide. We'd be able to do it much quicker, we'd be able to do it much cheaper, something like that.
Yeah, and we're trying to use our new website, which contains our full catalog that's constantly growing. We try to use that as a selling tool as well to get them to order through the website. They can submit RFQs through the website as well. When we respond with a Shopify cart and kind of allows them to check out right then and there. So there are things that we might try to do to help with the education, directing them to see what else is out there. But definitely the initial orders that we get are often way off with, they ask for like an engine spare and, that's not really our thing. We can probably do it, but be better off providing you the fasteners and the tools to fix that engine rather than a full new engine. There are others that can do that better than us. Last bucket really is catalog expansion, right? So beyond just serving our existing customers better, finding new customers, growing the number of brands and product categories specific to maritime, where we can have a competitive edge and a more differentiated catalog. That is a great way for us to grow our wallet share within both new and existing customers, but also to really get out there and find new customers as well who may find it difficult to get those products here in the United States. We've got a lot of attention every, year paid to just looking at the things that we're no quoting or because we don't really have much competency in it and seeing if there's opportunities there if we see enough volume. Trying to get new distributor agreements, 3M, for example, is one that is hard to get, but I think we see enough volume that it would be, there's not really a strong 3M distributor focus on the marine space. And so there's opportunity there for us and elsewhere. So, the other thing, I guess, last but not least, is that a lot of the time and attention to building out our tech stack and our processes over the last 2 to 3 years has really been not just with an eye towards the existing metric marine customers and operations, but to turn metric marine into a organization scalable and really a platform that can be built on to. And with that in mind, there are a lot of opportunities in our space to potentially acquire companies similar to Metro Marine that may operate in different product segments or geographies or markets even, but where there's enough fit that they can benefit from the structure and technology that we've established.
And I imagine for a buyer, like say if I was at Royal or Carnival, having the least amount of heads I need to chase down would be the best thing possible. So to the degree that you have all the other services picked up, you have other geographies where you're near other ports, that probably just makes life easier for your end customers in the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's really the vision that we have is to provide a one-stop shop for our customers where they trust that they can send us an order and whatever it is, it will be waiting when and where they want it to be for the ship at the dock. So that is going to require obviously some time and expansion, both in terms of our catalog, but also geographic ports that we serve. But yeah, we're getting there day by day.
Yeah, sounds like you have a lot of plates spinning there. How do you figure out which initiative to hit on first?
So definitely, one of my strengths and or failings is that, yeah, that vision is pretty expansive, and there's a lot of things that need to be done in order to tackle it. So, we do try to pace ourselves. We try to take things one quarter at a time, where each functional area, you know, picks a battle, say, project for that quarter to tackle, and you know, get through it first before we try to move on to something else. And in that way, the idea is that little by little, we've got 10 functional areas, and each quarter we pick 10 things that will materially improve the business function, um, or on the organization as a whole. Let's say we get through 90% of it, or 80% of it. So 8 out of 10 times four means that by the end of the year, we'll have accomplished 32 significant projects within the business. And that snowball effect is real.
Yeah. No, that's great. I've heard that before. Like people overestimate how much they could do in a week and underestimate how much they could do in a year. So to the degree every quarter you just pick this, go attack it, regardless of how much time you have to do all the research and analyze all the angles. If you start working towards something, like it'll all kind of add up together in the end.
Yeah, yeah, and that doesn't always line up perfectly. Some projects get done a little early, sometimes drag on a few more weeks into the next quarter, but before we move on to the next thing, we try to wrap it up, and we try to balance it, obviously, too, where if we know a particular functional area is going to have a busy quarter on other fronts, we pick a project that's a little bit lighter,
Yeah,
so that resources are balanced.
certainly. All right. So last question for you. Do your cruise line customers give you free cruise tickets? And if so, can I have one or two or three?
I wish, yeah. No, they sometimes we have some supplier programs that we should do a better job in participating. That'll maybe be a project for another, to tackle for another day. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, me first, and then
I'll circle back next quarter.
uh, please, yeah,
All right, Thomas. Well, good having you on. If anybody wants to just kind of get in touch with you, whether it's just industry talk or just even a potential acquisition target for you, what would be a good way to reach out?
yeah. So my email, Thomas Thomas at metricmarine.com. Great way to reach out. Alternatively, the uh, LinkedIn
Yeah,
is available. A lot of folks can connect with you there. Just shoot me a note with what you want to talk about. So long as you don't have, AI driven, cross message that I'm gonna probably engage with you and try to make a connection.
so the takeaway for this conversation is we do not like AI hallucinations. So I think we hit it. Be
Yeah,
careful. Be careful what you use, folks. All right.
yeah,
Thanks, Thomas.
for sure. Thank you, Brian.